In the heart of rural America lies a maximum security prison known as Graywater Correctional Facility. The facility, shrouded in concrete walls and barbed wire, houses some of the most dangerous criminals in the country. On the surface, it appears to be an ordinary prison operating within the bounds of law and order. But when you peel back the layers of this imposing structure, you find a dark narrative lurking within its walls. The prison's reputation for violence is almost legendary. Over the years, it had seen numerous riots, inmate-on-inmate violence, and staff assaults. Many who entered Graywater never left the same, or worse yet, never left at all. Inmates would often discuss the unspeakable horrors and the unofficial hierarchy that dictated their existence. Yet amidst the chaos, a particular incident born from desperation and vengeance would thrust this prison back into the national spotlight. What led to a bloody day in the spring of 2016 when multiple inmates were found dead within their own cell block? This is where our story begins, a harrowing tale of betrayal, violence, and a system that, while designed for rehabilitation, often fell tragically short. A week before the incident, inmate records showed an uptick in violence within Cellblock D, home to the prison's most notorious gangs. Inside that small, confined space, tensions brewed and simmered over weeks, creating an atmosphere ripe for an explosion. Local authorities had noticed an uptick in inmate complaints, but no substantial action had been taken. As we delve deeper into the life inside Graywater, it is crucial to understand the players involved in the tragic chain of events leading to that fateful day. Cellblock D was a microcosm of gang activity, with rival factions constantly vying for control over territory, resources, and respect. Among these inmates were three individuals: Marcus "Blood" Johnson, a hardened gang leader serving time for multiple homicides; Benny "Shiv" Rivera, a calculated and meticulous opportunist; and Brian "Doc" Talbot, a former medical student whose criminal past had landed him in the same environment as men far more brutal. While interviews with correctional officers revealed a particular warfare-like tension, inmates described a brewing resentment that most outsiders could never fathom: the growing intolerance for betrayal. In the weeks leading up to the incident, whispers of a potential alliance between the two most powerful gangs in the cell block sparked fear among their members. One inmate remarked, "When Blood found out that Doc was trying to broker peace between them, you could see the storm building." Tensions quickly escalated as gang loyalty was put to the test, and the rules of survival dictated that any sign of weakness warranted severe consequences. Through various informants, reports showed that the night before the incident, a clandestine meeting was held among the three key players. It was a gathering not to discuss terms but to plot a future drenched in violence. As dawn broke on the morning of April 15, 2016, Graywater Correctional Facility was a fortress of routine. Officers conducted their morning rounds, and inmates prepared for their day, unaware of the storm that was about to unfold. Eyewitness accounts reported that the atmosphere in Cell Block D felt noticeably different. It was as if the air crackled with foreboding, a whisper of catastrophe lingering just out of reach. Inmates exchanged wary glances, all aware that something was brewing. In the following hours, chaos erupted when Blood ordered a surprise attack on the rival gang's controlled area within the cell block. It was a calculated strike. The sound of locks clanging open resonated down the concrete halls, echoing into the chaotic melee that followed. Benny, wielding a makeshift weapon, participated in the fray with a chilling sense of purpose, demonstrating a disturbing ruthlessness. Meanwhile, Doc capitalized on the confusion, using his medical knowledge to inflict maximum harm, knowing how to exploit not just bodies but the chaos itself. Officers, taken aback by the sudden outbreak of violence, rushed to contain the situation. "I still remember the fear in their eyes," one officer recounted. "We had no idea how many were involved until it was too late." Chaos erupted as screams filled the halls, punctuated by the sounds of violence and panic. That day, violence spiraled out of control. By the time the riot was quelled, 6 inmates lay dead, the result of an unholy alliance of hatred, betrayal, and vengeance bearing witness to the chaos that had ensued. In the aftermath of the bloody chaos, Graywater Correctional Facility found itself under scrutiny from not just the local authorities but national media outlets calling for an investigation. Questions swirled around how such an event could occur within a facility built to contain and rehabilitate. As the authorities launched an investigation, interviews with survivors and witnesses provided critical insight into the events leading up to the carnage. Officers combed through security footage, analyzed inmate phone calls, and scrutinized every grain of evidence. Among those interviewed was Tommy, a young inmate who had managed to survive the uprising by hiding in a corner. "When it all went down, I just froze," he shared, his voice trembling. "I thought it was just a fight at first, but then I saw them trying to kill each other." The deep-rooted gang tensions were not new, but the level of violence that had unfolded was unprecedented. Authorities questioned not just the inmates involved but the system itself. What had been done to prevent this? Was there a failure of communication between the staff and the inmates? With the evidence mounting, it became clear that not only could the authorities not contain the violent culture proliferating within Greywater, but they also bore a responsibility to address it. The questions morphed from simply understanding the events of that day into inquiries surrounding what had been overlooked and why it had been allowed to escalate unchecked. The legal repercussions from the massacre reverberated throughout the justice system. The surviving involved inmates faced an array of charges, including murder and conspiracy. Meanwhile, the facility itself was scrutinized in civil court for negligence that had allowed the violence to fester and reach lethal proportions. Prosecutors painted vivid pictures of the attack based on testimonies from those willing to come forward. Visuals of the aftermath, a once chaotic cell block now replete with blood and despair, drenched the media reports, inciting public outrage. As legal battles ensued, family members of the deceased inmates sought justice through wrongful death lawsuits against the facility and the state. "The system failed them," one grieving mother stated with conviction, her voice cracking with emotion. "My son didn't deserve to die in that way. We trusted them to keep him safe." The prison administration, under siege, initiated discussions around revising policies and increasing measures to monitor inmate interactions, although many felt these were simply reactionary measures rather than a tangible solution. The hearings became a battleground, an intersection of grief and accountability, exposing just how fractured the correctional system had become. Years have passed since that tragic day, yet its haunting memory echoes throughout Greywater Correctional Facility. In the time since, various reforms have been implemented, aimed at addressing the root causes of issues that ignited that explosive outbreak of violence. Interviews with lawmakers revealed an ongoing commitment to improving the prison system, focusing on rehabilitation rather than punishment. Nevertheless, the scars left by that day remain. They serve as both a cautionary tale and a reminder of the human cost of unchecked violence. As I sat with former inmates who now advocate for change, their stories spoke volumes. Many of them recognized that transformation could only begin by confronting the darkness within, both personally and systemically. "If we don't talk about our demons, we'll never get out," one ex-inmate reflected. While Greywater stands as a testament to humanity's darker tendencies, the hope for a brighter future lingers. By shedding light on the failures of the system, we can confront the violence and despair lurking beneath the surface. For those who lost their lives, their stories remain central to a narrative that seeks to empower change, reminding us that justice is not simply a destination but a journey worth undertaking, one step at a time. In the years following the tragic incident at Greywater Correctional Facility, the haunting memories of that day remained etched in the minds of those who survived, both inmates and staff. For them, a new reality shaped by fear and pain emerged, framing their lives in entirely different ways. In interviews with correctional officers who had previously been viewed as merely enforcers of the law, a poignant vulnerability appeared. "I did my job, but I never thought about how close we were to losing control," remarked Officer Wells, who had rushed into the fray that day. "That fear lingers. It's part of my life now." For many staff members, the notion of returning to routine work was laden with anxiety. Training changed, with a stronger emphasis on conflict resolution and communication. It was the kind of education that had been sorely lacking before that harrowing day. Simultaneously, many of the inmates who'd survived the chaos were left grappling with the aftermath of witnessing their fellow inmates die at the hands of others. "You look over your shoulder every second," one inmate expressed candidly. "In here, nothing is ever forgotten." As they sat together in group therapy sessions, a transformative experience unfolded. In a poignant moment of vulnerability, one inmate spoke about the loss of friends during the incident, while another expressed anger toward the system that had failed them all. They listened, shared, and slowly began to forge connections that transcended gang affiliations and prison hierarchy. Programs focused on mental health and restorative justice initiatives began to emerge within the prison walls. It was an acknowledgement that these men were not beyond redemption, even after unspeakable violence. "I recognize now that we're all just trying to survive," a veteran inmate said during one session, his tone imbued with a sense of clarity. "But for change to happen, we need to confront our truths." The events at Greywater didn't just ripple through the facility, they sent shockwaves beyond its walls, stirring conversations about the broader corrections system across the nation. Advocates began to raise voices about the need for reforms, targeting not only the safety within prison walls but the conditions that fostered violence in the first place. News segments aired stories that explored the systemic issues faced by incarcerated individuals. "It's not just Greywater," pointed out Professor Martin, an expert on prison reform. "Across America, prisons are archaic institutions failing to remedy societal issues, they often exacerbate them." Discussion panels emerged, featuring former inmates and correctional officials who sought to shed light on their experiences. They shared stories laden with hope and despair, igniting conversations about pathways to rehabilitate not only individuals but the entire system. Reports from various studies illustrated the alarming rates of recidivism and the correlation with overcrowded facilities and lack of proper resources. For change to truly happen, there has to be a paradigm shift in how we view incarceration, Professor Martin emphasized, his voice carrying the weight of an urgent plea. As lawsuits against the state progressed, they became a pivotal factor in driving policy discussions. Legislative hearings brought people from all walks of life together, spotlighting shared goals for a humane corrections system. For those affected by the violence, the journey toward reconciliation was complex and layered with emotion. Memorial initiatives were launched in honor of the deceased, and families were invited to participate in fostering healing. Trees were planted around Greywater, each marking a life lost, a visual testament to the need for enduring change. A service was held where families shared memories, visited the garden, and reflected on their losses alongside those who lived through the violent events. For many, this gathering was an avenue for healing, enabling discussions that had long been left untouched. "We may never forget, but we can push forward," one mother stated during her speech to the gathered crowd, tears in her eyes. The courageous act of confronting pain became a defining moment for families and inmates alike. They began to participate in restorative justice workshops, paired together in group discussions designed to break down the barriers of grief and blame. As one ex-inmate remarked, "You have to face what you've done, not just to others but to yourself." These sessions became an embodiment of hope, where stories transformed from tales of despair into shared narratives of redemption. Empathy emerged from the ashes, creating an unexpected community grounded in appreciation, understanding, and the possibility of a different future. As we conclude our exploration into the events at Greywater Correctional Facility, we reflect on the implications of violence behind bars and the ripple effects it creates long after the screams have quieted. Many former inmates have successfully re-entered society, fueled by the desire to break the cycle of violence. Programs focusing on rehabilitation rather than punishment have begun to sprout across various correctional facilities nationwide, many inspired by the transformational narratives that emerged from Greywater. The new discourse on corrections privileges mental health, education, and reintegration, a movement aimed at recognizing incarcerated individuals as complex humans deserving of empathy rather than as mere statistics lost within the prison system. Community organizations, once distant from the realities inside prisons, have begun to engage actively, sharing resources and creating mentorship programs for those exiting facilities. "We're beginning to acknowledge that no one is irredeemable," said one volunteer coordinator. "It's about giving second chances." Today, Greywater stands as a reminder of our past failures and our potential for growth. As society wrestles with its collective conscience, it places a value on lives lost and lives saved, pushing forward towards change, ensuring the lessons learned from the bloodshed are embedded into the very structures that once perpetuated violence. Ultimately, the road ahead remains fraught with challenges, but within the darkness lies the possibility for light, a continuous journey toward accountability, healing, and the unwavering belief that justice can take many forms. As conversations concerning prison reform grew louder, the surrounding communities played a pivotal role in shaping the narrative. For too long, prisons had been viewed as isolated institutions, separate from the lives of families and neighbors who lived nearby. Yet, in the wake of the violence at Greywater, the lines between community and correctional facility blurred, forcing residents to reckon with their connections to those behind bars. Community members began hosting forums to discuss the implications of the prison's actions on their lives. Local churches, civic groups, and schools opened their doors to facilitate dialogue, inviting families of inmates as well as correctional officers to engage in constructive exchanges. "These are our neighbors, we can't forget that," one local pastor said during a community meeting. "We all share a responsibility here." The need for change became a rallying cry. Volunteer organizations flourished, mobilizing resources for educational programs, job training, and mental health services aimed at both inmates and their families. They aimed to dismantle stigma and establish new pathways to success for individuals re-entering society. Many inmates who had served time at Greywater felt a sense of community burgeoning beyond the prison walls. "I thought when I got out people would just see me as a former inmate," one former inmate reflected. "But here they were, providing us with support and hope. It's different this time." Individuals began to share their stories through various platforms. Community centers hosted storytelling nights where returning citizens spoke about their experiences and the lessons learned from their time inside. These narratives created a bridge, closing the gap between the incarcerated and community members who often saw only the fractures of crime. Among the initiatives sparked by the tragic events was a more profound emphasis on education, both inside and outside of prisons. Recognizing that knowledge could both serve as a shield against recidivism and foster a sense of dignity, organizations rallied to push for learning opportunities for inmates. Partnerships were formed with local colleges and universities to offer courses on subjects ranging from basic literacy to vocational training. Professors began visiting Greywater, inspired to shift perspectives not only on the inmates but also on the potential for change. "Many of these individuals are incredibly intelligent," one professor said. "They deserve a chance to learn and grow." Programs flourished, providing inmates with tools they could use to lead fulfilling lives post-release. Studies highlighted that education significantly lowered recidivism rates, presenting a clear-cut strategy that those involved were eager to promote. Graduation ceremonies became a poignant symbol of transformation, where friends, family, and community members came together to celebrate. One proud graduate proclaimed, "This doesn't define me, it's just a step toward who I want to be." Through these educational initiatives, the shadows that loomed over Greywater shifted. The stark prison walls began to resonate with hope, carrying whispers of potential futures instead of despair. With the cumulative weight of their pasts behind them, former inmates and community members became increasingly vocal in advocating for systemic changes. They launched campaigns to reform not just Greywater but the entire corrections system across the state. Their stories, once relegated to silence, came forward, creating a tapestry of experiences that highlighted the cracks in the system, cracks that had allowed situations like the Cellblock massacre to manifest unchecked. More than just advocating for individuals, they shed light on the impacts of systemic failure across racial and socioeconomic lines. One prominent community leader who had previously battled through incarceration stated, "If we want to change the future, we need to address the past. People need to know what happens behind those walls." Grassroots movements surged in popularity, reminding lawmakers that the voice of the community mattered. Advocates began organizing protests that targeted outdated policies and demanded better conditions within prisons. Campaigns gained traction, drawing attention to the necessity of restorative justice approaches aimed at healing rather than punishing. As these movements ignited conversations statewide, awareness about the cycle of violence and its consequences spread, prompting much-needed legislative action. Years passed since the harrowing events at Greywater, and the facility transformed into a focal point of both healing and resistance. Though the memories of that day remained firmly etched in history, the legacy left behind was one of hope and resilience. The gardens planted in memory of the lost became thriving spaces of healing and education, maintained by both former inmates and community volunteers. They symbolized a continuous conversation about what was necessary for healing and growth. The commitment was unwavering, lives could be saved and futures could be written anew. Reflecting on the struggles and triumphs, one community member noted, "In every flower that blooms, you see a story of strength. It's a reminder that we have a choice not just to endure but to thrive." As new policies were enacted aimed at addressing the roots of the issues within the prison system, Greywater stood as a testament to change. It was a reminder that societal issues often reflect back to the communities that surround them. The challenges faced were daunting, but a collective spirit flourished, highlighting the importance of unified voices demanding accountability and justice. Individuals once written off became integral advocates for change, proving that the road toward redemption is marked by courage, compassion, and a shared commitment to a better tomorrow. As I conclude this exploration of Greywater Correctional Facility and its consequential journey, one thing is abundantly clear: horror can serve as a catalyst for change. The devastating events that unfolded became a turning point, opening doors to essential conversations that spurred growth within the community. The trajectory toward reforming the prison system is ongoing and fraught with challenges, yet the collective resolve remains unwavering. Many continue to fight for a justice system grounded in understanding and rehabilitation. The journey is filled with ups and downs, but hope shines brightly through the darkness. Inmates who once saw no light at the end of the tunnel now act as beacons for future generations, harnessing their experiences to inspire change. The notion that one pivotal event can birth transformation reminds us that compassion and resilience can create pathways where none existed. Through storytelling and advocacy, healing becomes a communal endeavor. Those who once felt isolated are now woven into the fabric of a movement that seeks to uplift both individuals and society as a whole. As we look ahead, we embrace the notion that change begins with acknowledging our shared humanity. Greywater may have been a site of unimaginable sorrow, but it has transformed into a model of potential, showcasing that even amidst despair, hope can still bloom and thrive. The story of Greywater Correctional Facility extended far beyond its walls, influencing discussions on prison reform across state lines. In light of the events that unfolded, more states began to evaluate their own correctional systems. The focus shifted from purely punitive measures to rehabilitation, understanding that investing in education and mental health services could create lasting change. In Washington, D.C., lawmakers began to take notice of the initiatives blossoming from the tragedy. A coalition of advocates traveled to the Capitol, armed with testimonies and data that illustrated the positive outcomes of educational programs and restorative justice models implemented in Greywater. Their message was clear: change is not just possible, it's necessary. Conversations began to transpire at the highest levels of government. Bills were introduced to reform sentencing laws, enhance mental health care in prisons, and fund educational programs designed to reintegrate former inmates back into society. Testimonies from former inmates and community advocates played pivotal roles in swaying public opinion. "We need to shift our mindset from punishment to healing," one former inmate stated at a congressional hearing. "It begins with recognizing our shared humanity, even among those who have erred." Particularly impactful was a mentorship initiative that emerged between Greywater and local universities. The collaboration focused on creating sustainable avenues for education, providing inmates with access to college courses and mentorship from students and faculty. The aim was simple yet profound: allow incarcerated individuals the opportunity to dream of a future beyond the prison walls. Students from various departments volunteered time to teach inmates essential skills, ranging from literacy and computer training to more advanced subjects such as philosophy and sociology. In engagements filled with enthusiasm and curiosity, relationships flourished, allowing inmates to experience the world outside in ways they had never dreamed possible. Crucially, the volunteers gained insight into the life experiences of the incarcerated, shattering preconceived notions and building empathy. "It's hard to explain how much I learned from them," a student mentor reflected. "They taught me resilience. They're so much more than their mistakes." This cross-pollination of knowledge and experience provided a fertile ground for transformation, aiming toward breaking the cycles of violence and despair that once permeated their lives. As one inmate noted during a graduation ceremony, "Education freed my mind long before I stepped outside these walls." Amidst the various programs redirecting focus toward healing, the arts emerged as a powerful tool for expression and recovery. An art therapy initiative opened its doors, encouraging inmates to explore their emotions through various creative outlets such as painting, writing, and music. Inmates who had long felt trapped by their circumstances began to channel their pain into creativity. Their work became a medium through which they could communicate their struggles and experiences, works filled with raw emotion that often moved observers to tears. "Art was my escape," one inmate explained. "It allowed me to express things I didn't know how to say." Exhibitions showcasing their art emerged, creating opportunities for dialogue between inmates and community members. Those who attended were often changed forever as they walked through halls adorned with pieces that told stories of sorrow, hope, and redemption. "You realize they are just like us, struggling to find their way," one visitor remarked. By bridging the gap between two worlds, these artistic expressions fostered connections and dismantled barriers, bringing the community closer to those who had been marginalized. They reveled in the shared catharsis, an experience that reflected the possibility of healing for everyone involved. Despite the positive advancements, setbacks emerged as the journey unfolded. The path toward comprehensive reform was filled with obstacles, both systemic and personal. Conversations about funding for new programs often clashed with budgetary constraints, leaving many initiatives teetering on the brink of collapse. Compounding these challenges was public skepticism. Some community members continued to carry biases against inmates, opting for a rigid view that painted them as criminals rather than humans deserving of redemption. "I still hear people say they should just pay their dues and nothing more," a local advocate stated, frustration palpable in her voice. "But it's not that simple." To combat this prevailing mindset, advocates pushed for awareness campaigns aimed at educating the public on the successes that stemmed from reform. Through door-to-door outreach and city forums, they hoped to shift perceptions surrounding recidivism and rehabilitation. "We need to dispel the myths," one former inmate proclaimed at a town hall meeting. "It's about understanding the systemic issues at play. Transformation requires all of us." As the movement grew, conversations intensified, not just within the boundaries of Greywater but throughout the larger community as they wrestled with what it meant to pursue justice and healing collectively. Years have passed since the upheaval at Greywater, yet the legacy of change it ignited continues to inspire those who play a part in rewriting its narrative. Today, the facility stands as a site not only of confinement but also of redemption, a reminder that even the darkest paths can lead to light. The programs initiated within Greywater have expanded, garnering recognition from organizations across the nation. They serve as examples of what can be accomplished through unity, empathy, and understanding. Policy changes fueled by advocacy efforts have taken root, showcasing what a comprehensive approach to justice can achieve. As I reflect on the evolution of Greywater and its surrounding community, I am filled with hope. Hope not just for those who have struggled within its halls but for society as a whole. If a place once synonymous with despair could transform into a model of resilience, healing, and education, then perhaps change can occur anywhere. A garden now flourishes where once blood stained the concrete, reminding all who walk its pathways that transformation is possible. "Our stories matter," a former inmate declared during a recent interview. "Every one of us has the potential for change, and together we can build a future without fear." The journey may be ongoing, but the fight for justice and compassion continues, anchored in the belief that healing is a choice we can all choose to make one step at a time. As the seasons changed within the small town surrounding Greywater Correctional Facility, so too did the spirits of its residents. The prison that once stood as a symbol of despair was now transforming into a beacon of hope, a living testament to the power of community and the potential for redemption. The stories that emerged from the facility painted a portrait of resilience, one that resonated far beyond its walls. New initiatives sprang up as partnerships between inmates, community members, and local organizations flourished. Literacy programs expanded, and vocational training became more accessible, allowing former inmates to gain valuable skills before their release. Local businesses began to take notice, showing increased willingness to hire those with criminal records, recognizing that employing these individuals could lead to a more stable community. At a recent job fair held at a community center, one employer expressed enthusiasm about hiring individuals with experience navigating the challenges of life. "These folks have grit," he asserted. "They've overcome adversity, that's more than most can say. They deserve a shot." The atmosphere was charged with optimism, a palpable shift that hinted at what could be achieved when pasts were not held against them. Yet the journey toward rebuilding lives was anything but simple. Many individuals who re-entered society faced the dual challenge of reconciling their time in prison with aspirations of mainstream acceptance. For some, family ties had frayed during incarceration, making the journey toward reintegration fraught with emotional struggles. In a candid discussion during a support group, one former inmate expressed the struggle of reconnecting with family. "I'm a different person now, but they only see what I was," he shared, looking around the room for understanding. The nods of fellow participants conveyed shared experiences, illustrating how the shadow of an old identity can linger long after transformation has begun. Advocacy groups recognized this struggle and began integrating family support programs aimed at rebuilding trust and understanding. Host families emerged as volunteers willing to take in returning citizens temporarily, fostering a sense of community and belonging when biological families struggled to reconnect. "This isn't about charity, it's about healing," one host family member stated, empathy woven into their words. "We're all in this together. Every connection we help restore is another step toward a stronger community." Despite the progress made, systemic issues remained deeply entrenched, often hindering long-term success. While many were experiencing meaningful change, the stigmas attached to having a criminal record continued to echo throughout society. Those attempting to reintegrate found that societal myths and misconceptions could still manifest in subtle but impactful ways. Through community forums, discussions on mental health and the need for education about the criminal justice system were emphasized. "Awareness is vital," said a local organizer at one meeting. "We need to break down the barriers built on fear and ignorance." Reform groups organized campaigns to educate the broader public, using testimonials and real stories to challenge the stereotypes that too often defined former inmates. The message was clear: understanding could foster compassion, dismantling the walls that separated us from them. As the community came together to advocate for change, they sought ways to engage law enforcement in these initiatives. Collaborative restorative justice programs emerged, allowing officers to build relationships with returning citizens and emphasizing productive dialogue. The shift in mindset was crucial. It emphasized understanding over vilification. The cultural metamorphosis around Greywater was profound. Once isolated by a legacy of violence and despair, the community evolved into one marked by resilience, empathy, and collective responsibility. The stories of those housed within the prison became a catalyst for change, urging the town to confront biases, break cycles, and offer paths for growth. As new partnerships developed, diverse voices were celebrated. Storytelling events grew in popularity, allowing former inmates, community members, and even correctional staff to come together and share their experiences. These events became healing spaces, illuminating the shared humanity that bound them all. "I once thought I was unworthy, unredeemable," one participant shared during a particularly moving event. "But now I see that our stories are powerful. They can spark change, they can heal, we just have to share them." These gatherings drew increasingly larger crowds, weaving together a network of support that transcended traditional boundaries. The walls that once segregated inmates from the community crumbled as understanding took root, fostering connections previously thought impossible. As the years passed, the community surrounding Greywater maintained its commitment to a brighter future, a promise that even the darkest pasts could lead to rewarding outcomes. The focus shifted to sustainability, ensuring that the systems in place would endure, empowering future generations and fostering new waves of change. Local policymakers began to recognize the lessons learned from Greywater and its transformation, using these insights to shape a broader reform agenda across the state. Legislative measures focused on integrating programs for mental health treatment, educational resources, and transitional housing options emerged, underscoring the necessity of addressing the multifaceted issues at play. Communities across the nation took note of Greywater's successes, inspired to adapt its model to their own contexts. Advocacy groups forged alliances, creating a network dedicated to sharing best practices and fostering support, ensuring that dialogue on systems change remained at the forefront. And as the seasons came and went, the gardens surrounding Greywater bloomed, a living testament to the enduring power of community. Each flower that thrived represented the stories of individuals who had weathered storms, emerging stronger and more united than before. With every passing year, Greywater became more than just a correctional facility. it stood as a symbol of what could be achieved through collective effort. It cultivated a new vision, a redefinition of justice transcending punishment to embrace empathy and rehabilitation. As new generations stepped into advocacy roles, their voices rose up, urging society to envision a future free from the shackles of stigma and misunderstanding. "We have the power to change the narrative," one young advocate proclaimed at a rally. "We are the voices of those who came before us, and we owe it to them to continue fighting for a better future." This new generation found inspiration in the resilience of those who had transformed Greywater. They shared the belief that everyone deserves a chance to heal, to grow, and to rewrite their stories. The collective spirit of hope solidified their resolve, lighting the way forward. Through their efforts, they engaged local schools in discussions about advocacy and change, teaching younger generations the importance of compassion and understanding. By fostering these values, they hoped to cultivate a community mindset that no longer viewed incarceration merely as punishment, but as a catalyst for deeper social reflection. As the years continued to pass, the community came together to commemorate the lives lost during the Cellblock massacre. The tragic events, though painful, became a pivotal point around which much of the transformation centered. By acknowledging this past, they sought to honor the memories of those who had suffered. A memorial event was organized, drawing in community members from all walks of life. Tears were shed as stories were shared, creating an atmosphere that bridged the divides created by the past. "We remember not only the lives taken but also the lessons learned," a public official stated during the ceremony. "Let this event stand as a reminder that we are capable of change, and that unity and compassion can transcend despair." Throughout the event, stories of resilience emerged, tales of transformation, growth, and hope. The memorial became a striking visual symbol for the community, planting seeds of empathy in the soil of remembrance. It served as a ritual of renewal, asserting that while the scars of the past may linger, they can also be transformed into pathways toward healing. As the sun set on the memorial, a shared understanding prevailed. The future was not just about those lost, but about how their legacies would impact generations to come, urging all to work tirelessly toward justice, healing, and community. Though the path had been long and fraught with challenges, the community surrounding Greywater Correctional Facility emerged as a unique model of change and resilience. The efforts to reform reflections on how systemic issues affect individuals and families, and how compassion can rewrite narratives, paved the way for a renewed understanding of justice. As conversations centered around rebuilding and restoration continued to grow, Greywater became synonymous with hope, a testament to the possibilities that blossom when individuals choose empathy over division. Community members worked tirelessly to dismantle stereotypes, recognizing that everyone is deserving of dignity regardless of their past. Recognizing their role as champions of change, local advocates remained committed to ensuring that the stories of all who passed through Greywater were told. They carried forward the commitment to rewrite the narrative surrounding incarceration while cultivating an environment of acceptance and solidarity. The gardens around Greywater, symbols of renewal, stood as silent witnesses to the evolution of love, understanding, and unity. Their blooms echoed the voices of resilience, reminding all that even the darkest chapters can lead to bright beginnings. As we look to the future, the journey continues, grounded in the belief that every individual has the ability to overcome their past. Each day becomes an opportunity to embrace change, cultivate growth, and foster healing, verifying that together, lasting transformation is not just possible but inevitable. As Greywater Correctional Facility endured its transformation, it began to serve as a hub for advocacy surrounding criminal justice reform. This shift fostered collaboration among various stakeholders, from policymakers to grassroots organizations, each dedicated to reshaping perceptions and practices related to incarceration. Former inmates who had walked the path from confinement to community advocates began leading workshops, sharing their knowledge and experiences. "We've been through the system and we know what it takes to change things," one former inmate noted to a receptive audience. "We want to ensure no one else has to go through what we did." Through these initiatives, former inmates became powerful messengers, using their lived experiences as testaments to the importance of compassionate reform. They visited schools, community centers, and legislative hearings, amplifying their voices in a chorus advocating for a justice system that prioritized rehabilitation over retribution. The advocacy framework gained traction, illustrating both the pitfalls of the current system and the promise inherent in adopting a more restorative approach. Panels were organized where individuals on opposite sides of the justice spectrum sat down to engage in meaningful dialogue, demonstrating that even divergent perspectives could be reconciled if approached with openness and understanding. Recognizing the pivotal role that education plays in shaping future narratives, programs aimed at young people were launched, targeting high schools in the area. Workshops focused on criminal justice reform allowed students to explore the complexities of the legal system while engaging them in discussions about empathy and the impact of societal perceptions. Students crafted community service projects centered on helping those transitioning from incarceration and pooled their efforts into a mentorship program designed to assist youth at risk of becoming entangled in the justice system. Change doesn't just happen, we have to create it, a high school senior asserted during a presentation to her peers. The enthusiasm from the next generation reinvigorated the movement, prompting discussions on how to build a more inclusive society. Schools began to incorporate curriculum changes that addressed the realities of the criminal justice system, emphasizing that thoughtful advocacy should begin at an early age. Student-led advocacy groups emerged, organizing rallies and campaigns that garnered attention, spreading the message throughout the community. Their efforts underscored the potential for future citizens to make meaningful contributions towards social justice, proving that voices, young or old, could inspire change. As the changes within Greywater resonated through the local community, the influence began to radiate outward, inspiring movements in other correctional facilities across the nation. Reports highlighting the successes of the programs initiated at Greywater caught the attention of reform advocates and legislators alike, emphasizing the effectiveness of compassionate approaches to rehabilitation. Policy advisors began reaching out to the local leaders of Greywater's transformation, seeking their input when formulating new legislation. What started as a response to trauma has blossomed into a national conversation about justice, one reform advocate said, noting how their work inspired peer facilities to adopt similar programs. As state and national discussions emerged, the focus shifted toward comprehensive reforms that encompassed areas such as mental health care, education, and restorative justice initiatives. Advocates realized that the more insight shared across jurisdictions, the closer they could move toward a collective advancement in treating those within the justice system with dignity and respect. Conferences created opportunities for leaders from various states to come together, share experiences, and discuss best practices. "We have a chance to create a new model," stated one participant at a national conference focused on effective rehabilitative strategies. "Let's do this together." The growing national dialogue on criminal justice reform inevitably led to a series of legislative changes at both state and federal levels. Input from those directly impacted by the system played a crucial role in shaping these discussions, emphasizing that what happened within the walls of each facility affected entire communities. Coalitions formed to push for the passage of laws aimed at expanding educational opportunities for incarcerated individuals, improving mental health services, and creating clearer pathways for re-entry into society. The collaborative efforts culminated in significant achievements, with new initiatives gaining approval in state legislatures. Advocates rejoiced as legislative sessions brought long-sought reforms into focus, but challenges still loomed on the horizon. Resistance from those wary of change lingered and debates surrounding funding became contentious. As advocates gathered for a rally outside the state capitol, the message remained clear: change is non-negotiable. Through persistent effort and a shared vision for justice, alliances began to take shape, transforming rhetoric around justice reform into action. "We're not here to fight the system," one reform leader noted during a pivotal rally. "We're here to reshape it together." As the movement gained momentum, the community surrounding Greywater continued to celebrate milestones, recognizing both the efforts made and the lives transformed along the way. Anniversaries became occasions for reflection, note-taking in the progress achieved and the path ahead. Community festivals emerged around these milestones, inviting local families to engage with advocacy groups and former inmates. Engagement activities showcased educational successes, with artists sharing their creative works, business owners highlighting successful job placements, and participants offering testimonies of triumph over adversity. One jubilant celebration culminated in the unveiling of a mural that illustrated the journey of transformation, showcasing the stories of resilience that define the community. Each brushstroke carried the collective spirit of individuals who had weathered storms, testifying to the power of interconnectivity and understanding. As families gathered, laughter and joy replaced the quiet somberness that had once engulfed the facility. This was not just a celebration of survival but an acknowledgement of growth, a testament to the collective resolve embodied by the community. Despite the successes celebrated, the journey towards comprehensive reform was ongoing. Awareness persisted surrounding the multifaceted nature of justice, and advocates remained vigilant in addressing shortcomings in the system. The lessons learned in the aftermath of Greywater served as a constant reminder: transformation was not a destination but an enduring process. In a pivotal meeting among local leaders, ongoing discussions focused on evaluating the effectiveness of implemented reforms, assessing community needs, and identifying barriers still faced. "We're constantly evolving," one project coordinator remarked. "What worked last year may not work this year. We need to listen and adapt." Community members from various backgrounds came together in this effort, striving to ensure that the voices of all stakeholders were heard. Collaborative strategies focused on continuing education regarding the complexities of the justice system and widening the safety net for returning citizens. As advocates prepared for another year of outreach and reform, they recognized their collective strength, united by a shared mission of compassion and justice. "We can lift each other up," one advocate said, embodying the spirit of collaboration that defined their movement. "Together, we are unstoppable." As I reflect on the journey of Greywater Correctional Facility and the surrounding community, it becomes evident that progress is an ever-evolving landscape. Through resilience, advocacy, and shared humanity, this town transformed from a place often associated solely with despair into a powerful example of what can be achieved through compassion. The seeds of hope sown within those prison walls have blossomed into a complex network of support and understanding, and it continues to echo far beyond its origins. Inspired by the spirit of resilience, communities across the nation now embrace a new vision: a justice system built upon compassion rather than fear. In that vision, every individual, regardless of their past, is seen as worthy of dignity and a chance to thrive. Awareness persists that the road ahead may be fraught with challenges, yet it remains illuminated by the convictions of those determined to shape a better future. The journey continues, and those who traverse the gray areas of the justice system stand as living proof that change is not simply a possibility, it's a promise. In every story told and every effort made, the belief that a better tomorrow is within reach remains steadfast. Together, as advocates rise to meet this challenge, they ensure that the echoes from Greywater live on, embodying the enduring spirit of hope and resilience for generations to come. The journey through the transformations at Greywater Correctional Facility has unveiled a profound narrative of resilience, growth, and community. From the shadows of despair, individuals emerged, demonstrating that their stories hold power. The shared experiences of both inmates and community members became a catalyst for change, urging society to confront biases and redefine justice. As advocacy efforts gained momentum, the collective voices worked tirelessly to reshape perceptions surrounding incarceration. The commitment to empathy, education, and understanding fostered an environment where healing could flourish. Acknowledging the past while pursuing a brighter future became a shared mission among advocates, former inmates, and community members. Through collaborative efforts, transformative initiatives paved the way for a new paradigm of justice, one rooted in compassion and rehabilitation rather than punishment. The relationships forged and the stories shared formed a rich tapestry of hope and renewal. The legacy of Greywater serves as a testament to the possibility of change, lighting the path forward for those who dare to believe in the power of second chances. Though the road ahead remains complex, the journey proves that with determination, unity, and a commitment to understanding, lasting transformation is not just an aspiration, it is an achievable reality. The echoes of Greywater endure, reminding us that the fight for justice, compassion, and belonging continues, and that every step taken toward healing resonates with future generations. Through collective action and unwavering spirit, the community stands poised to build a better tomorrow, one filled with promise and potential.